It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the players of the 2025 Gold Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Guatemala. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 30 on the players of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode covers Guatemala's players. Just a note on where we're at in our media casts. Series 21 to 27 dealt with the World Cup 2026 qualifying. Series 21, for example, is covering the Asian region. And we actually did preview the preliminary round there. We were hoping to do more previewing for World Cup 2026, but life got busy. Nevertheless, we still have hopes of covering it, but we're now going to have to do it mostly through reviews. So the past, present, and future media cast that we produced in the spring of 2024 is still relevant. It outlines the World Cup 2026 qualifying procedure in each region, and we will add a link to that in the show notes. So we'll come back to World Cup 2026 qualifying, but we'll do that after our current focus, which is this 2025 Gold Cup, and particularly this episode on Guatemala's players. I'm, for YouTube watchers, trying to approximate the uniform of Guatemala, kind of just getting the colors right. I really got to get a shirt from Guatemala. I have the white and the light blue, but I can't duplicate the sash. That's a really great part of their uniform. I'm also wearing a Cardiff City hoodie, in honor of one of the players on the team. Maybe you can guess who it is, otherwise you'll have to wait till we get to it. But the dark blue of Cardiff City is also part of Guatemala's color scheme. All right, on with the show. We're doing this media cast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. So we examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and we categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. So we will go into more details on the career biographies of players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less detail, perhaps even just a name, of players unlikely to get there. So this is part one. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. That'll probably be in early June. And at that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. And our focus in part two will be on predicting the starters. So this episode, part one, has three sections. Section one, where we look at some general information on the team. In section two, we cover the main candidates in each position. And section three is where we summarize and conclude, especially focusing on injuries to keep an eye on. All right, let's begin. We move on to section one. I'm just going to make the screen a little bit bigger. And we'll begin by big names off the squad. So we really only have one. And really, he's been off the squad for quite a while. It is goalkeeper Ricardo Jerez. He is now 39 years old, has 63 caps for Guatemala since 2006, still playing at the club level, but not really a chance of getting back onto the squad. He was the starting keeper in the 2011 and 2015 Gold Cups, but not really after that. He wasn't selected for the 2021 Gold Cup and was just a backup keeper in 2023. He has been around all this time though, and last appeared for the national team on the bench in October of 2023. So a farewell to Ricardo Jerez, and that's all we have there. We're going to move on to the team and look at their recent games. So this is kind of what we're considering in the period that we're looking at. We begin with the 2023 Gold Cup. They played 4 games in that. They actually passed the group stage and got knocked out in the quarterfinals. That was in June of 2023, so that's when we begin. In September of 2023, they had one friendly. And then in the fall of 2023, 4 games for the 2023-2024 Nations League group stage. That was in September and October of 2023. They didn't reach the quarterfinals there, so they played friendlies in November and actually had a run of 5 friendlies in a row from November 2024 to May 2025. Sorry, that should be November 2023 to May 2024, because they didn't have any games in March either, or any official games. Their next official games then were the 2026 World Cup qualifying games in June of 2024. 2 games there as they start their World Cup qualifying campaign. However, it'll be a year until they play the second set of games there. That's coming up in June of 2025. During the summer there, basically, they had 3 friendlies. 1 in June, 1 in July, and 1 in September. I should say that middle game, the one in June was against Argentina. They played their top squad there. And in September, against Uruguay, most of their top squad. The one in the middle was against El Salvador in July, and that was a very experimental squad. Next, we have the fall Nations League games, so 4 games there in the 2024-25 Nations League in September and October. Once again, they didn't reach the quarterfinals and actually didn't play any games in November. So their next game is a friendly in March, but they do have some business also in March. That is the 2025 Gold Cup qualifying games. That's why they're here. So 2 games there, also in March 2025. So that friendly basically acting as a warm-up. I should say for most of their friendlies, we'll talk more detail in section 2, but we do see a lot of their A teams playing, A players playing, a couple of B players, and then in some friendlies, just 2 or maybe 3, like the one in July 2024 against El Salvador, a more experimental squad. All right, we move on to talk a little bit about formations. So we won't go through each game, of course. We'll just do kind of an analysis here. And our analysis shows that 58% of the games, or 15 of the 26 games, were the 4-2-3-1 formation. So they really favor that formation. Next, is a 4-4-2 formation, which they used 5 times, or in 19% of games. And then they had 6 other formations that they used only 1 time there. So really the 4-2-3-1 formation is the one to keep in mind as we go through the players. And I'll just note a couple of patterns here. So Guatemala has used a 2-man central defense in 88% of their games in this period. So really don't favor a 3-man central defense. They only use that in 3 games, or in 12% of the games. And then only once did the left and right backs push up to become wingers in, say, a 3-5-2 formation. But the other 2 were actually 5-3-2 or 5-4-1. So the winger or the backs did not push up. The midfield is generally 2 lines in their favored 4-2-3-1 formation. So that's defensive and central, perhaps attacking midfielders in those lines. But they do, as we saw, use a 4-4-2 formation about 20% of the time. So that is 1 line of midfield, and that could be a mix of defensive or attacking midfielders. We'll talk a little bit about it in part 2, or in section 2. Finally, they use a single forward in 75% of their games. and a two-man forward in 25% of the games. So 3 out of 4 games, we're going to see just a single forward. All right, the last order of business in this section is upcoming games, and I alluded to it by saying they're playing their second set of World Cup qualifying games in June of 2025. Those will act as warm-up games for the Gold Cup there. On June 6th, at home, they face the Dominican Republic. So that's a pretty contentious game. But even more contentious is the second one in June of 2025. They play Jamaica away. So pretty tough games there for World Cup qualifying for Guatemala. And those will, as I said, act as warm-ups for the Gold Cup. Both of those teams, of course, in the Gold Cup as well. And Jamaica in their group, moreover. Okay, let's move on to section 2, the players. And we begin with the manager. This is a pretty easy one. We only have one manager to look at, and that is the current manager, Luis Fernando Tena. And he was a professional player. He never played for the national team. He's Mexican. I should have said that off the top. In his managerial career, he's been with Guatemala since 2021. So the whole of this period, he has been their manager. Otherwise, he's been associated solely in Mexico, including caretaker manager of the Mexican national team in 2013. Otherwise, it's clubs in Mexico, including some of the bigger clubs, Guadalajara, Cruz Azul, and Club America. I think Cruz Azul, he was the manager 4 times of that team. Okay. And yeah, in terms of kind of summarizing the position, we don't have much to say because Tena was in charge during the entirety of the period here. So we don't have any managerial changes to talk about. So we can move on to goalkeepers. And we begin by listing the candidates, and then we'll come back and take a closer look at the candidates who seem more likely to make the squad. So we begin with, well, no definite candidates here. So we begin with likely candidate Nicholas Hagen. He has an injury concern we'll talk about in section 3. Next, also likely is Freddy Perez, and then a third likely candidate in Kenderson Navarro. For possible candidates, we have Kevin Moscoco and Luis Moran. And then seemingly off the squad, we have the player we introduced in section 1, Ricardo Jerez, and also Jordi Cifuentes. So I'll just briefly deal with those players because we won't go into detail. We talked about Ricardo Jerez in section 1. He last appeared in October 2023. Jordi Cifuentes was just on the bench for an experimental friendly in July of 2024. So otherwise hasn't appeared. Let's go back and look at the candidates then. We begin with Nicholas Hagen, and he is 29 years old with 47 caps for Guatemala since 2018, and he plays for Columbus Crew in the USA since 2024. Prior to that, he was in Israel, Norway, and Azerbaijan, so bit of a world traveler there. Nicholas Hagen was the starter in the 2021 and 23 Gold Cups and started 11 of their 16 games from the start of 2024 on the bench for 1 and injured for the last 3 and not selected for 2 matches. So we will talk about his injury, but disregarding that, he is a likely candidate here. Next is likely candidate Freddy Perez. He is 31 years old with just 8 caps for the national team. He got his first one in 2022, and he plays for Comunicación in Guatemala, one of their bigger teams. He's been with them for 10 years. And his first tournament was the 2023 Gold Cup. He was a backup keeper there. Freddy Perez has started 3 of the last 16 games from the start of 2024 and on the bench for 2 and injured for 1, but 10 matches that he was not selected for. However, those starts have been recent, which makes him a likely candidate. Next, we have Kenderson Navarro. He's much younger, just 23 years old, with 2 caps for the national team since 2021. And he plays for Municipal in Guatemala since 2019. He was also on the bench for the 2021 Gold Cup. I don't know why I said also there, but he was on the bench there. And actually, replaced Nicholas Hagen in game 3 there, so started and finished that, so he actually had some tournament field experience. However, Kenderson Navarro was not selected for the Gold Cup in 2023. He made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And in fact, he returned after an almost 2-year absence in May of 2024. Didn't start any of the remaining 13 games, but was on the bench for 10 of them and not selected for 3 matches. So he looks like a backup keeper here. The first of the 2 possible candidates, Kevin Muskoka, is 32 years old, and he has 5 caps for Guatemala since 2020. He plays for Mixco, another of the big teams in Guatemala, since 2024, and his whole career has been with teams in Guatemala. He was also a backup keeper on the 2021 Gold Cup there. Didn't see any action in that tournament, but he also, like Kenderson Navarro, was not selected for the 2023 Gold Cup, selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. And like Kenderson Navarro, he also returned after an absence in May 2024. His was a 3-year absence compared to Navarro's 2. And he started, Muskoka started 2 of their remaining 13 games and was on the bench for 8. However, he was not selected for the last 3 matches. And I'll point out that pattern so you can keep an eye on it as we go. We do see quite a few changes in those March 2025 matches, the friendly and then the 2 Gold Cup qualifiers. So everything seemed fairly stable until those last 3 matches. And we can see it here with Muskoka not selected for the squad and other players coming in. And one of those is Luis Moran. So Luis Moran is 27 years old, but no caps for Guatemala. He plays for Antigua in Guatemala since 2018 and has no tournament experience. He actually was on the bench for 2 appearances in late 2019, Luis Moran, and then returned after an almost 5.5-year absence right at the end here in March 2025. Didn't start any of the remaining 3 games, but was on the bench for all 3 matches. However, we don't see that as being enough to put him as a likely candidate. So we do see changes at the end with Muskoka and Moran coming in at the end there. However, we're not going to summarize the position in part 1. That's where we kind of go through the position and lay out who has played over the recent period. We're going to save that for part 2. And here we'll just stick with introducing the candidates. So that's the goalkeepers, and let's move on to the defense. Here, I'll talk a little bit about the position first. So Guatemala has used a 2-man central defense in 88% of the games in this period, so most of the time. And then once in a while, 3 games, they have used a 3-man central defense. So we are going to begin with the central defenders here and list the candidates. We have a definite candidate in Jose Carlos Pinto, and then a likely candidate in Nicholas Samayoa, and then possible candidates in just one actually, Kevin Ruiz, and possible but unlikely Carlos Estrada there. Sorry, just sorting out my graphics here. And 2 players who are off the squad. Actually, I'll just deal with these possible but unlikely and below as we go here. Carlos Estrada he started 1 game during this period and wasn't selected for the last 8 matches. The next is the seemingly off the squad, Gerardo Gordillo. And he was actually part of the 2023 Gold Cup there, but last appeared for the team in January of 2024. He was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup, so an experienced player drifting off the squad. The last one is Matheus Gayton. Matheus Gayton just used in an experimental friendly in July 2024. And those are the candidates. So really not many for central defence. We may have to wait till part 2 to understand why there are so few. But we'll just stick to our task of introducing candidates here. So the definite candidate, Jose Carlos Pinto, is captain of the team. And he is 32 years old with 66 caps and 3 goals. Since 2016. So he plays for Comunicaciones in Guatemala, and all of his clubs have been in Guatemala. He was selected actually for the 2015 Gold Cup for the preliminary squad, 35-man preliminary squad there, and didn't make the final cut. And it took until 2021 for his first tournament, where he was captain of the team by then, and started all games in that and the 2023 Gold Cup. So is an important player for them, as you can see by his recent participation, starting 14 of their 16 games from the start of 2024. He was injured for one of those and then not selected for another. So Jose Carlos Pinto, a steady presence for Guatemala. The likely candidate is Nicolas Samayoa, and he is 30 years old with 26 caps and 1 goal for Guatemala since 2018. He's actually a teammate of Jose Carlos Pinto at Comunicaciones. He's been there since 2019, actually. Carlos Pinto's kind of has as well, because it's his second stint with them. But maybe I'm a bit wrong in saying they're recent teammates, because Samayoa has been loaned out to Politehnica Iași in Romania, Politehnica Iași actually, since 2023, and he's also played for a couple of teams in the USA. Samayoa was a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup. That was his tournament, his first tournament, and he started 8 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, subbing in for 1 and on the bench for 2, so not selected for 5 matches. So Nicolas Samayoa, a likely candidate here, especially given the lack of central defenders that they have available to them. Okay, the possible candidate is Kevin Ruiz, and he's 30 years old with 11 caps for Guatemala since 2018, and he's in his second stint with Xelajú in Guatemala since 2022, and he was not part of the 2023 Gold Cup, just on the 60-man preliminary squad there. And he Kevin Ruiz started 4 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, as well as subbing in for 1 and on the bench for 8. However, once again, we see those changes in March 2025. Kevin Ruiz not selected for the last 3 matches there. Okay, so once again, we'll kind of outline the position, how they're getting by with so few central defenders in part 2. But those are the candidates. Let's move on to left back. And just a bit about the position. So left and right backs on many teams can be pushed up to be wingers when it's something, a 3-man defense like a 3-5-2. But as we saw in section 1, Guatemala only did that once, so almost always in this period at least do they have a left back and a right back. So the first candidate is the definite candidate, Jose Arden. And we'll name the candidates here. Also definite is Jose Morales, sometimes called Jose Alfredo Morales. We have no likely or no candidates at the likely level, but we have Carlos Aguiar at the possible level. And then at the possible but unlikely, and we'll just give whatever biographical information we're going to give, we have Jeshua Urizar. And he got his first cap actually in May of 2024. Didn't start any games. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 10 of those 13 matches. So didn't really get into the team. We have a couple of candidates also seemingly off the squad. The first is Cesar Arquila. He was a sub in the 2023 Gold Cup, but that was his last appearance for the national team. We also have Antonio Lopez, 26 caps for Guatemala, and a sub in the 2023 Gold Cup, but last appeared in January 2024. Antonio Lopez. So let's go back and look at the main candidates here. We have I think I put the wrong name at the beginning there. Jose Arden is the definite candidate, the first of 2. And he played half of his games as, or he's actually listed as a left back, but he played half of his games as a centre back here. We left him as left back though, because he also did play in his coded position. Jose Arden is 25 years old and has 35 caps and 1 goal for Guatemala since 2022. He plays for Antigua in Guatemala. That's the only club he's ever been with. Even in his youth. And Jose Arden was a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup. Got 2 yellow cards in that tournament. And Arden has started 13 of their 16 games since the start of 2024, as well as subbing in for 1. So just 2 matches that he was not selected for. So Jose Arden, a definite candidate here. Jose Morales, also a definite candidate, and he also has been playing out of position for about half of his games. He's coded as a left back, but played about half the games in this period as a right back. And that's largely because no suitable right back was available, as we'll see soon. Jose Morales is 29 years old, with 38 caps and 3 goals for Guatemala since 2021. He plays for Municipal in Guatemala, his second stint with them since 2020. And he was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup. He actually lost his starting position in that cup and was just a substitute in the 2023 Gold Cup. Didn't see any action there. However, over the recent period, he started 8 of their 16 games, Jose Morales, since the start of 2024, as well as subbing in for 5 and on the bench for 2. So that's just 1 match that Morales has not been selected for. So we have him as a definite candidate. Once again, no players at the likely level. So we have a possible candidate, Carlos Aguiar. He's very young, just 19 years old. Got his first cap this year in 2025, but has 2 caps now. And he plays in Guatemala for Malacateco since 2022. He's scheduled to move to Municipal, a bigger club, in the summer of 2025. Carlos Aguiar actually got his first appearance back in May of 2024. He didn't start any of the remaining 13 games, but he was subbed in for 2 at the end there, on the bench for 2, and with the under-21 or the under-20 team for 1, and not selected for 8 others. So selected for the last 3 games there, Carlos Aguiar. So again, those March games bring bringing some changes to the squad March 2025. But once again, we'll talk about the position, a summary of the position in part 2. So those are our candidates. Let's move on over to the right side. And here, well, our first name should be possible candidate Aaron Herrera. We'll put him on the list here because he's really the main part of the narrative here, but he's only a possible candidate. The likely candidate is Alan Yanis there. And we have Stephen Robles seemingly off the squad. So I'll just deal with the information here. He was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup and a sub in the 2023 Gold Cup, but is seemingly off the squad now, having last appeared in October of 2023. We also have Christian Jimenez seemingly off the squad, and he has 19 caps for the national team, but didn't play in any tournaments. And Christian Jimenez last appeared on the bench in March of 2024. Okay, let's go back and look at the main candidates here. So Alan Yanis is an injury concern. We'll talk about that more in part 2. But he is 28 years old with 19 caps and 1 goal for Guatemala since 2018. And he plays for Mixco in Guatemala since 2023. Hasn't been part of any tournaments. But as we saw, he's been with the team since 2018, so has been around for a while. Alan Yanis actually returned after a more than 3-year absence in May of 2024 and went on to start 7 of their 13 games there. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for all 5 others. So I'm not sure why we don't have him as a definite candidate. That's the profile of a definite candidate. Of course, his injury is a concern, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll talk about it in section 2, but I'm going to move him up to definite candidate because after his absence, he's been a consistent player or a consistent selection. Okay, the possible candidate is Aaron Herrera, and he's 28 years old with 12 caps for Guatemala since 2023. Aaron Herrera was born in the USA and actually played a single game for the USA, as well as being selected for their 2021 Gold Cup preliminary squad. Didn't make the final cut there. And in between this and that and the 2023 Gold Cup, he switched his allegiance to Guatemala and was a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup, starting all 4 games there. Aaron Herrera started 6 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, but he was not selected for 10 others, including the last 3 matches. So he kind of was drifting out of his starting position, but once again, we see changes in the March 2025 squad. All right, so those are the 2 candidates, and once again, I'll say Jose Morales, the left back, has played quite a few games in this position as well. And that brings us to the end of our defenders, and let's move on to the candidates in the midfield. And we begin with defensive midfielders. Well, we'll begin with a summary of the position. So as we said part of this in section 1, almost always a 2-man midfield for Guatemala in their favored 4-2-3-1 formation in 60% of the games, but in 88% of the games overall, it's a 2-man midfield. They played many friendlies, 9 friendlies, Guatemala, and the midfield was a lot more experimentative than we saw in defense in those friendlies. And overall, there were more changes in the midfield than in defense. So once again, a sign that it's still unsettled in March 2025. The Gold Cup qualifiers, there were 3 different formations, 3 different midfield formations were used, and 2 new players introduced at the end there. So again, we'll talk about that more in section 2 when we summarize the position, but a bit of kind of shakiness in the midfield, much less consistent than the defence. Okay, we begin with defensive midfielders and a definite candidate in Oscar Castellanos. Sorry, my graphics are misbehaving here. Okay, Oscar Castellanos, a definite candidate. Also definite is Jonathan Franco. And we have a likely candidate in Rodrigo Savaria. Rodrigo Savaria. I have to actually pause a little bit here to get my graphics in the right place. There we go. Okay, Rodrigo Savaria, a likely candidate. A possible candidate, Jose Rosales. And also Marco Dominguez, sometimes called Marco Dominguez Ramirez. And also George Aparicio. That's probably Jorge Aparicio, also a possible candidate. And then one player, possible but unlikely, Carlos Santos. Actually first appeared in May 2024 and did start one of their 13 games as well as subbing in for one. But both of those were experimental friendlies. And so hasn't really been called up to the A team, Carlos Santos. Let's look back at those who are being called up to the A team. Oscar Castellanos, actually a very versatile player. I'll talk about him being in other positions, but just for single games. He is a defensive midfielder, and he is 25 years old with an impressive 49 caps and 3 goals since 2021 for Guatemala. And he's in his second stint with Antigua in Guatemala, this second stint beginning in 2017, so a long time with Antigua. He was part of the 2021 and 2023 Gold Cups, a sub in the first and a starter in the 2023 edition. And Oscar Castellanos has started 12 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, as well as subbing in for 3. So just one match that Castellanos was not called up for. The other definite candidate is Jonathan Franco. He's just 22 years old with 14 caps for Guatemala since 2014. Kind of out of the blue, was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2023 Gold Cup, but didn't make the final cut there. But Jonathan Franco has started 13 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, as well as subbing in for 1 and on the bench for 1. So he, like Castellano, just one match that he was not called up for. The likely candidate is Rodrigo Saravia, one of the longer-term players on the team. He's 32 years old with 57 caps since 2016, no goals in that time. And he is with, actually just moved to back to Guatemala, playing for Municipal since 2025. But he was with teams in Costa Rica, Venezuela, and Uruguay in his past, as well as several teams in the USA. Rodrigo Saravia was not selected for the 2021 Gold Cup. That was a bit of a shock, actually, but was for the 2023 Gold Cup and was a starter in that tournament. However, even though he's a likely candidate over the recent period, Saravia has started only 1 of their 16 games from the start of 2024. However, he has subbed in for 4 and been on the bench for 8. So just 3 matches that Saravia was not called up for. So Rodrigo Saravia, a likely candidate. Okay, the first of 3 possible candidates is Jose Rosales. He's 32 years old with 9 caps and 1 goal since 2016 for Guatemala. However, despite that long history, he's never been called up for a tournament. He returned after a 17-month absence in March of 2025 and then started 2 of their 3 remaining games, as well as being on the bench for 1 of those, the last match. So Jose Rosales, again, part of this real transition or change in March of 2025 there, and he's on the good side of it, having come in after an absence. The second possible candidate is Marco Dominguez. He's 29 years old with 21 caps for the national team since 2020, and plays for Comunicaciones in Guatemala since 2024. He was briefly in Canada for Pacific FC there on the west side in 2024. Also a short stint in Kuwait there. And I'm seeing he, at the beginning of his career, also played in Canada and the USA. So actually has a lot of ties to Canada. And was eligible to play for them, Marco Dominguez, 2 youth clubs there, and his first professional club, all of those in Canada. Dominguez started in the 2021 Gold Cup, but lost his starting position there, and only made the preliminary squad for the 2023 edition. Over the recent period, he has started 3 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, Dominguez, and he has subbed in for 6. But there were 7 matches that he was not selected for. That includes the last 3 matches. All right, the third possible candidate is Jorge Aparicio, and he is actually been with the team for a long time. He's 33 years old, with 48 caps and 1 goal since 2014. And he plays for Xelajú in Guatemala since 2024. Most of his clubs have been in Guatemala, but in 2018, he played for a team in Croatia. Aparicio was a starter in the 2015 Gold Cup, so going quite a ways back there. Also a starter in 2021. But in the recent Gold Cup in 2023, he was just a substitute and has kind of fallen into that role, having started only 1 of their 16 games since the start of 2024 and subbed in for 2, not selected for 13 others. So I'm surprised with that he's a possible candidate. So I'm guessing he has that his participation has been recent. There. Okay, that is Jorge Aparicio. Maybe we'll take a look at that and change it in part 2. I'm a bit tongue-tied because I'm like, what? How could he be a possible candidate missing 13 of their last games? Okay. That is it, though, for defensive midfielders, and not a lot of difference between them and central midfielders, and actually quite unusually, Guatemala doesn't have, almost has no players coded as central midfielders, just one who is seemingly off the squad, so we'll introduce him here. It's Marlon Sequin. At the seemingly off the squad level. He actually did sub into 3 games at the 2023 Gold Cup and then went on to start game 4, Marlon Sequin. We won't go into detail, though, because he hasn't been called up since March of 2024. So, yes, quite odd that they have no other players coded as central midfielders. And that is it. So once again, we'll summarize who has been populating the midfield over the recent period when we get to part 2, but we're going to move on with the candidates here and look at left midfielders. So I'll just talk briefly about the position. The position of left and right midfielder require a 3-man midfield, such as in a 4-3-3 formation. So Guatemala used 3 midfielders in only 3 of their games over this period, and 2 of them were experimental friendlies. So this formation doesn't really play a role here, and consequently the left midfield and right midfielders position. So players who are coded for these positions have been moved to the position that they did play for, and we won't bother too much with that. Actually, yes, I don't think there's anything more to say, so we're going to move on to the attacking end of the field. And attacking midfielders, we're going to begin with a versatile midfielder here, and we're going to introduce Oscar Santis. Really a winger is what he is. He's coded as an attacking midfield. But to be honest, I don't think he's actually played as the central attacking midfielder over this period. He's been more of a right winger, a left winger, and even as a forward. I think just once, though. Nevertheless, Oscar Santos is a definite candidate here. He is 26 years old. He's the only one here, so I'll just jump into introducing him here. Oscar Santos, 26 years old, with 41 caps and 12 goals for Guatemala since 2021, and plays for Dinamo Tbilisi in Georgia since 2024. And otherwise just played in Guatemala. Santos was a substitute in the 2021 Gold Cup, but actually became a starter after game one. However, he was not selected for the 2023 Gold Cup, and that was a bit of a shock since he had been pretty active in playing. He had started 9 of their 15 games in the build-up to the tournament there. Over this period, Oscar Santos has started 11 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, subbed in for 2 and not selected for 3. So looks like a definite candidate here. Hopefully he won't be shocked the way he was in 2023. I mean, there might have been a story behind that that I don't know, but from my perspective, it was a shock. Okay, that is it. So we're going to see Oscar Santos, Oscar Santos's name popping up here and there, including in our first position here, left attacker. So I'll just talk about the position a little bit here. Soccer Files has come to see this and the right attacking position as dependent on the formation. So usually it's an attacking winger, either an attacking winger, as in a 4-4-2 formation, an attacking midfielder, as in the 4-2-3-1 formation, or a left forward in a 4-3-3 formation. For Guatemala, most commonly in this period, it was a left attacking and right attacking midfielder because they favored a 4-2-3-1 formation. However, they did have the left attacking winger and right attacking winger in a 4-2-2 formation. That was about 30% of the games. 4-4-2 or something like it, but only once did they have a formation like a 4-3-3 where they used a left and right forward. Okay, so we're going to think mostly in terms of left attacking and right attacking midfielder here, and the candidates are well, we start with probably not the main candidate in the position, but a definite candidate in Elmer Cardoza. And the main candidate is Carlos Mejia, but we have him only as a likely candidate here too. We'll talk about why a little bit when we get into it. He is an injury concern. That's not the reason, though. He's a likely candidate. We have Rudy Munoz also as a likely candidate. And then Gabriel Garcia seemingly off the squad. So we'll dispense with him here. Gabriel Garcia was a substitute in the 2023 Gold Cup and didn't start any of the games in this period and was not selected for the last 9 matches. So actually, I usually see him called Esteban Garcia here, but also Gabriel Garcia, it seems. Let's go back to the top and look at the candidates. So Elmer Cardozo is just 23 years old with 14 caps and no goals since 2022, plays for Zalaju in Guatemala since 2020, but was loaned to a small club in Greece in 2024. Cardoza has started 8 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4 others. So always selected over the period. That's why we have Elmer Cardoza as a definite candidate. Carlos Mejia is 34 years old and has 54 caps and 8 goals since 2014. So one of the senior players on the team. He also plays for Zelaju in Guatemala, but has recently moved there in 2025. He's played 3 times for Comunicacion in Guatemala, and his whole career has been in Guatemala. He too, like the veteran we saw before, was part of the 2015 Gold Cup. He was just a substitute in that tournament. But it doesn't seem to have been a consideration for the 2021 Gold Cup. I have no notes on him here. Usually I have something like he was on the preliminary squad. So maybe I got to check into that. But 2023 Gold Cup, he was a starter and started all 4 games there. Actually 3 of the 4 games there. Carlos Mejia in the recent period started 3 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, subbed in for 4 and out with 2 separate injuries for the last 7. But just 2 matches that he was not selected for. So forgive me, I thought he played a bigger role over this period, but actually just 3 of 16 starts and an injury concern on top of it. So a few factors working against Carlos Mejia here. He is a likely candidate, disregarding the injury concern. Also likely is Rudy Munoz. So he is very young, 20 years old, just 3 caps for Guatemala since 2025. One of these changes brought in March 2025. Munoz plays for Municipal in Guatemala, got his first cap in March of 2025, and started all 3 of their remaining games. So we have to consider Rudy Munoz likely candidate given that recent participation. Okay, those are the candidates for left attackers. We'll summarize the position in part 2 and move on here to talk about our right attackers. Okay, the first candidate, there are no definite candidates here. First candidate is Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, really probably a definite candidate. And he is the reason why I'm wearing this Cardiff shirt. We love Nathaniel Mendez-Lang in this household because he played for Cardiff, where I grew up. He played for them for 4 years from 2017 to 21. So he earns our undying loyalty. Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, I'll talk his career biography once we introduce the rest of the names. So also at the likely level is Olga Escobar. And then we have 2 players at the seemingly off the squad level. The first is Jonathan Moran. Not selected for the last 9 matches, Jonathan Moran. And Jonathan Puzoelos, not selected for the last 7 matches. Both of those players were on the preliminary squad for the Gold Cup in 2023, but haven't really made an impact on the team. Let's go up then to our 2 likely candidates. Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, actually born in England and joined Guatemala quite late. He's 33 years old, but just joined a couple of years ago in 2023. Nevertheless, has 17 caps for them, no goals though. And he continues to play his club soccer in England, currently with Derby since 2022, and a list of teams there in England, including Cardiff. Mendez-Lang, his first tournament was in the Gold Cup. In fact, that was his first game for the national team. He started all 4 games in that tournament, and over the recent period has started 6 of their 16 games from the start of 2024. He subbed in for 3 and injured for 1, not selected for 6 other matches. But I should say that all of those were friendlies. Nathaniel Mendez-Lang doesn't come for friendlies, but plays all of the kind of official games there for Guatemala. The other possible or the other likely candidate is Olga Escobar. So he probably the youngest yet, or maybe the second one we have that's 19 years old. Olga Escobar, though, has been with Guatemala since 2023 and has 7 caps and 1 goal for them already. And he plays for CF Montreal here in Canada since 2025, was with New England Revolution's B team for a couple of years prior to that. In fact, Olga Escobar was born in the United States. He got his first cap for Guatemala in November 2023 and started one of their 16 games, subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 5, and out for a couple of others. I'll just say not selected for 3 matches. So that is pretty good. He's called up quite regularly, Olga Escobar. So not much of a starter is he, but called up regularly, which is what we're interested in here, is how much they're called up. We'll be interested in starters in part 2. I forgot to add one more name seemingly off the squad. That's William Fajardo. We'll just put him on just in case he comes into the team more than he has. So far, just a first and only appearance was on the bench in an experimental friendly, so hasn't made any impact on the team yet. Okay, that is right attackers. And we move on to central attacking midfield. And this is a position that Guatemala uses much more than most other teams do. If you think back to their favorite 4-2-3-1 formation, there's a central attacking midfielder there, and they used it in 58% of games. And some of the other formations also call for a central attacking midfielder. So we can say in about 2/3 of the games, this position is in use. And our versatile midfielder, Oscar Santos, who, when we talk about the position or the summaries of the positions in part 2, you'll see Oscar Santos did start quite a bit on the left and right side, but is actually coded as an attacking midfielder. But we moved him to versatile midfielder. Our main candidate here is also miscoded. I think he's coded as a left midfielder. We're going to kind of watch him over the next while and probably recode him to an attacking midfielder. It's Pedro Altan. During this period, 2 of his 3 starts were as an attacking midfielder there. Next, we have the main candidate in this position, but only at the likely level, Alejandro Galindo. And then we go down to possible but unlikely, Jose Espinoza. So we'll briefly talk about him here. Not selected for the last 13 matches, need I say more there, Jose Espinoza, but on the bench for 3 matches in this period. And then 2 seemingly off the squad characters, Jose Ochoa, not selected for the last 15 of the 16 games in this period, just subbed in for 1. And Néstor Cabrero only appeared on the bench in an experimental friendly. So those players are quite young. They may come into the fray in the future, all 3 of them. But we move on to talk about the main candidates. And the definite candidate, Pedro Altan, is 28 years old with 30 caps and 3 goals for Guatemala since 2019. He was a substitute in the 2023 Gold Cup, but did actually start game 4 in that tournament. Generally, though, I think of Pedro Altan as a perennial substitute. Even in this period, he only started 1 of their 16 games from the start of 2024 and subbed into 11. He was on the bench for 2 and injured for 1. So just 1 match that he was not selected for, but that equals his 1 start. So Pedro Altan, the perennial substitute, a definite candidate for selection, though, we think. Alejandro Galindo is 33 years old with 58 caps and 8 goals for Guatemala. So senior player on the squad since 2012. Currently playing for Municipal in Guatemala, his 2nd stint with them since 2023, and has been in Guatemala for most of the time, but actually started out in Colombia playing for Santa Fe's youth club, and that was his first club too, and then moved to Guatemala. I do believe he was born in Guatemala, though. Anyway, he was not selected for the Gold Cup in 2015. He was on the preliminary squad there. But he was selected for the 2021 Gold Cup, where he was on the bench for game one, but gained a starting position after that and was a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup as well. Alejandro Galindo has started 10 of their 16 games from the start of 2024 and subbed in for one and on the bench for three, including the last two matches. He was injured for one and not selected for one other. But I will say that he has started less in recent games. He was pretty consistent starter for a while. So Alejandro Galindo, a likely candidate, sometimes plays as a forward when they don't use the central attacking midfield position. All right, that brings us to the end of the midfield, and we move on to forwards. We do have secondary strikers in this category, but we don't have any players playing in the position. And we'll just say that what we said in section one in terms of a summary of the position, that a single forward is used in 75% of Guatemala's games during this period, and a two-man forward line in 25% of the games. And when it's a three-man forward line, they only use that in one game, but I believe it was the last one. We consider the outside forwards to be left and right attackers. So they would have been covered in the previous section. Let's move on to introduce the main candidates. We have a definite candidate in Rubio Ruben. I think he's increasingly being called Rubio Ruben. I know in the past he was sometimes called Rubio Mendez, and sometimes may still be. Anyway, he's a definite candidate. We also have a likely candidate in Jose Carlos Martinez, but he is an injury concern, so we'll have to talk about that in part two. We also have a likely candidate in Eric Limas, and then we go down to possible candidates. Darwin Lom, who's been kind of drifting off the team over the recent period. Not off the team, actually, but off the starting lineup. And then just off the team in the last few games. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let's go to the possible but unlikely category, where we have one candidate in Jose Franco, and I'll dispense with him here. He did start one of their games over the recent period, but was not selected for the last 8 matches. And we have Robin Bentoncourt, seemingly off the squad. He actually has 26 caps for Guatemala and was part of the 2021 Gold Cup. Not part of the 2023 Gold Cup, but still was around at least until October of 2023, where he made his last appearance. We also have Dewinder Bradley, as a seemingly off the squad player. He last appeared in June of 2023, and Jeffrey Bantes just on the bench in an experimental friendly, that one with El Salvador in July 2024. So again, those were generally young players who we might see coming into the squad down the road. All right, then, let's go back and look at these candidates. I see I put them all in the wrong place here, so I'm just going to move these here. And we are talking about forwards, and the definite striker, Rubio Ruben. Okay, there we go. Graphics are all good to go. Rubio Ruben is 29 years old and has 23 caps and an impressive 11 goals, so almost 50% there for Guatemala since 2022. From 2014 to 18, though, he was with the USA and actually earned 7 caps and no goals for them. and he was part of USA Gold Cups. Well, not squads, but he was selected for preliminary squads. I'm guessing all of his games for them with friendlies were friendlies because he wouldn't be allowed to play for Guatemala if he played in a tournament or something like that. But over 4 tournaments, he was a consideration right up until the 2021 Gold Cup for USA, where he was selected for the preliminary squad but didn't make the final cut. And Ruben's clubs have mostly been in the USA too. He's currently with Charleston Battery in the USA since 2025, and with a bigger club, Real Salt Lake in USA before that. But he has played in other countries too, in Mexico, Norway, Denmark, and Netherlands too. His youth clubs, though, were in the USA. So he switched his allegiance to Guatemala and was available for the 2023 Gold Cup, where he started 3 of the 4 games there, and had since started 11 of their 16 games from the start of 2024, subbed in for 2 and not called up for 3 matches there. So Ruben, a definite candidate here. Next, we have Jose Carlos Martinez, and he is 28 years old with 28 caps and 4 goals for Guatemala since 2018. And he's been with Municipal in Guatemala since 2017, so a long time with that club. Was not actually part of the squads in the 2021 and 2023 Gold Cups. He was on the preliminary squad both times, but didn't make the final cut. And recently, he returned from a year-long absence in November 2023, just before the period we're looking at for players. So from the start of 2024, he started 5 of their 16 games and was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. Jose Carlos Martinez injured for 1 and not selected for 4 matches. So a likely candidate here, but an injury concern, which we will talk about in Section 3. The other likely candidate is Eric Limos. He is 24 years old with 2 caps and 1 goal for Guatemala since 2024. So a relative newcomer here. Plays for Comunicaciones in Guatemala since 2024 and with another club in Guatemala before that. He got his first cap, Eric Limos, in September of 2024. Didn't start any of the remaining 8 games, but was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5. Just 1 match that he wasn't selected for. So we consider Eric Limos a likely candidate, even though he does not seem to be a starter. More of a starter at the beginning of the period was our possible candidate, Darwin Lom, and he is 28 years old with 35 caps and 11 goals for Guatemala since 2020. He is also with Comunicación in Guatemala since 2024, so a teammate of Eric Limos there. But he has played in other countries, including Costa Rica and United States. In fact, a lot of his early career was with university teams in the USA and his first few clubs in the USA. That's his club career. Let's take a look at Darwin Lom's tournament career. He was subbed into the 2021 Gold Cup and gained a starting position from game 2. In the 2023 Gold Cup, he did start 1 game, but actually Ruben was really the main forward there. In the recent period, though, Darwin Lom has started none of their 16 games. We're going from the start of 2024 for the player participation. But Lom was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 5, and then not selected for 5 others. And that includes the last 3 matches. So, as I said before, Darwin Lom kind of drifting slowly off the team, it seems. And that is it for the main candidates for forwards, and that is it for Section 2 of this mediacast. So we move on to Section 3. And in Section 3, we welcome new listeners. who are just joining for the short version of part one on Guatemala's players here. So I'll speak to those people briefly. In the full version, we introduce the candidates and their likelihood of making the squad. So if you want more details, basically on why we put them in the category of likelihood that we did, and also for some career biographical information on the players, you can listen to the full version. And in this version, we're just going to do a quick review, and that's what it'll be to people who have listened to part one. So I'll just say we're not concerning ourselves here with the with predicting starters. That'll be kind of our focus in part two. Here we're just listing the candidates and their likelihood of making it. So here we are back at the top of the list, and we have manager Luis Fernando Tena. He's been their manager since 2021, so really is the only one in the picture, and we don't see them getting rid of him before the tournament. However, I should say he made a lot of changes for the March 2025 game, so we're not really sure what motivated that. Anyway, goalkeepers, we had no candidates at the definite level, but we have three likely candidates: Nicholas Hagen, who's an injury concern that we'll talk about soon, Freddy Perez and Kenderson Navarro, and then two possible candidates, Kevin Moscoco and Luis Moran. We're not really going to talk about the players or mention the players below that level unless there's a reason to, but we did actually talk about seemingly off the squad Ricardo Jerez, because he's kind of a veteran that has recently left the squad. Okay, and yeah, there too in the goalkeeper situation, some changes in March, which in part two will make it a bit difficult to predict. Well, not so much the starter, but probably the backup keepers. Anyway, we move on to central defense. We have a definite candidate in Jose Carlos Pinto, a likely candidate in Nicolas Samayoa, and a possible candidate in Kevin Ruiz. That's all we have, which is very thin for central defense. In part two, when we summarize the positions and who's been occupying them, you'll see how that has played out. But just three candidates on the list there. For left backs, we have two definite candidates. The first is Jose Arden, and the second Jose Morales, sometimes called Jose Alfred Morales. No candidates at the likely level, but a possible candidate in Carlos Aguiar, again, just coming in for those March games in 2025 there. And over to the right back position, we have a definite candidate in Alan Yanes, who's an injury concern too, and a possible candidate in Aaron Herrera. We should note that left back Jose Morales has been playing over here as well. On to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. We have quite a few of those. Two definite candidates. I'm just trying to get the graphics to behave here. Right at the top of the page there, Oscar Castellanos and Jonathan Franco are two definite candidates. A likely candidate in Rodrigo Savaria, and then three possible candidates: Jose Rosales, Marco Dominguez, and Jorge Aparicio. Jose Morales just coming in at the end there. For central midfielders, oddly, we don't really have many names, any names here, just one who seemed to be off the squad, which we won't mention. And then left and right midfielders, we do have some players coded that way, but because they don't use the position, we move those players to the position that they had been playing in over the last little while. So we move on to the attacking end of the field, and we began actually with a versatile attacker in Oscar Santos. He played mostly as a left winger and a right wing, or sorry, left attacker and a right attacker. Did show up as a forward once, but oddly never played as central attacking midfielder, which is actually his coding. Oscar Santos, a definite candidate to be named to the squad, we think. Okay, left attackers, we have a definite candidate in Elmer Cardoza, and likely candidates in Carlos Mejia and Rudy Munoz. So 3 candidates over there. And on the right side, right attacking position, we have no definite candidate, but 2 likely candidates in Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, pretty much a definite candidate, I'd say, and also likely Olger Escobar. That's all we have there for right attackers. Guatemala does use a 4-2-3-1 formation in quite a lot of their games. So we have central attackers, central attacking midfield position being used quite a bit. Here we have Pedro Alton, actually coded as a left midfielder, but we'll probably change that going forward. Pedro Alton, even though he's not much of a starter, a definite candidate to make the squad, we think. And really the starter is Alejandro Galindo, but we've moved him down to likely level for reasons we talked about in the full version. Those are the only 2 candidates here. So we move on to forwards. No players coded as secondary striker and the position not used. So we go directly to forwards. And Guatemala uses a single forward in about 75% of the games that we looked at over the period. And the main man is Rubio Ruben, sometimes known as Rubio Mendez. He's a definite candidate. We have 2 likely candidates, Jose Carlos Martinez, although he is an injury concern, and Eric Limas. And then we have a possible candidate in Darwin Lom, who has been slowly drifting off the squad over this period. Okay, those are all the candidates. Let's move on to our second order of business, a review of injuries. And we will start with right back Alan Yanis. Actually, he and all the other players in this category are coded as likely. And that likely coding did not take into account their injuries. So Alan Yanis, a right back, he is out with a broken tibia from early April, an unknown return date, but that seems serious enough that I don't think we can expect him back. I'll put him as an unknown here, unknown return date, but probably will be out of contention. So they're having a bit of trouble filling the right back, which is why Jose Morales has been playing over there quite a bit. The next candidate, Carlos Mejia, the left attacker, he was out with 2 injuries for the last 7 games. The last of those was a knee injury for the March 2025 games. However, Carlos Mejia was recovered and back playing in mid-April. So we can say Carlos Mejia is recovered from injury, which is good news. Once again, he was a likely, he is a likely candidate. The third one is Jose Carlos Martinez. So he's a forward, also a likely candidate. He is out with a rib fracture since mid-May and an unknown return date. So once again, we might have to get closer to the cup to get a better sense of when he's returned. He's currently listed as an unknown return date. Okay, those are the 3 injuries to keep an eye on. And let's move on to our closing thoughts. So for Guatemala, really, all we want to say is that they've been very steady, the same manager since 2021, a pretty steady squad all the way from the beginning of the period we looked at in the 2023 Gold Cup, all the way up until November of 2024. However, in March of 2025, we see quite a few changes, some players dropping off the squad, some coming into the squad. So that'll cause us a bit of confusion in predicting starters. So I think part 2 will be particularly important for Guatemala. All right, that is it. And the last order of business here is previewing part 2. So when the squad lists are published, and we know who was on the preliminary squad and the final squad, we're going to do part 2 and go through the list that we created here in part 1 and tell you who is on the team and who isn't. Basically, the players we consider definite or likely who are not selected, we would view them as notable non-selections, and we'll emphasize that. Any players at the possible but unlikely or below who are included, we'll point out as surprise inclusions. Also, we'll talk about any new players, and we'll update the injuries that we talked about here. And then one of the main orders of business in the part 2 mediacast will be to predict who we think the starters are going to be. We would like to thank Future Bass for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Alone.